Hollywood has always loved its legends. The shining stars, the larger-than-life personalities, the heroes who seem to live forever on the silver screen. For generations, audiences believed the stories they saw in theaters, the brave adventurers, the noble cowboys, the charming romantics. But behind the bright lights and glamorous premieres, another reality often existed, one far darker than the films themselves. Few people understand that contrast better than Ron Howard. Growing up in Hollywood as a child actor and later becoming an award-winning director, Howard witnessed the industry from the inside. Over time, he came to see that the golden age many people romanticize was not always golden. In interviews reflecting on old Hollywood, he has spoken about the uncomfortable truth that many beloved stars lived lives very different from the heroic images audiences admired. To him, the industry was often built on silence, protection of powerful figures, and a culture that allowed terrible behavior to be ignored as long as the cameras kept rolling. One of the earliest figures whose legend masked a darker reality was Errol Flynn. During the 1930s and 1940s, Flynn embodied the ideal Hollywood adventurer. Audiences adored him for his daring sword fights and charismatic charm in films like Captain Blood. His image was that of a fearless rogue, handsome, witty, and irresistible. But the same recklessness that made him fascinating on screen often followed him off it. Flynn's personal life became increasingly controversial as his fame grew. His lifestyle of heavy drinking, partying, and excess eventually turned into scandal. In 1942, two teenage girls accused him of statutory rape, leading to a sensational trial that dominated headlines across the United States. Though he was ultimately acquitted, the case deeply divided public opinion. Many believed the powerful studio system and Flynn's enormous popularity helped protect him from consequences. The trial transformed him from a beloved swashbuckler into a symbol of how fame could shield troubling behavior. Despite the scandal, Flynn's reputation among fans remained surprisingly resilient. He continued to act, but his life gradually spiraled into decline. Addiction and financial problems consumed him, and by the late 1950s, his once vibrant career had faded. When he died in 1959 at only 50 years old, the image of the charming adventurer remained in the public imagination, even as the darker stories surrounding his life continued to resurface in biographies and historical accounts. Another figure who represented the contradictions of Hollywood power was Kirk Douglas. Known for his intense performances and commanding presence, Douglas rose from poverty to become one of the most influential actors of his generation. Films such as Spartacus cemented his reputation as a powerful leading man who embodied strength and determination. Yet many who worked with Douglas described him as an intensely driven and sometimes intimidating figure. His ambition was legendary, and on film sets he demanded absolute commitment from everyone around him. Directors and actors alike noted that his determination could easily turn into explosive frustration when things did not go his way. Over the years, controversy also followed Douglas in the form of long-discussed allegations surrounding the late actress Natalie Wood. Claims that resurfaced decades later suggested that she may have been assaulted as a teenager by a powerful actor whose identity remained widely speculated upon. Wood's sister later referenced Douglas in her memoir, bringing renewed attention to the story. While no charges were ever filed and Douglas denied wrongdoing, the controversy added another complicated layer to the legacy of a man celebrated for his strength and resilience. For many observers, Douglas symbolized the dual nature of Hollywood's power structure. He was a brilliant performer and an influential figure who helped challenge the industry's blacklist era. Yet his personal reputation remained surrounded by whispers and unresolved questions. While some stories from Hollywood's past involved excess and aggression, others revolved around the harsh environment created by powerful personalities. Faye Dunaway was widely regarded as one of the most talented actresses of her generation. Her performances in classics like Bonnie and Clyde and Chinatown showcased a unique intensity that captivated audiences. Dunaway possessed a magnetic screen presence that directors admired, but her reputation behind the scenes often told a different story. Numerous accounts from film sets described her as extremely demanding and prone to explosive outbursts. Crew members and assistants sometimes spoke about the tension that surrounded her during productions, claiming that everyone on set felt pressure to meet her expectations perfectly. Ironically, one of Dunaway's most famous roles involved portraying another controversial Hollywood figure in the film Mommy Dearest, where she played actress Joan Crawford. The film depicted Crawford as an abusive and controlling parent. Some observers later noted the strange parallel between the character's reputation and Dunaway's own demanding behavior during production. Though Dunaway's talent was undeniable, her reputation eventually affected her career. Directors became hesitant to work with her, and opportunities began to diminish. The actress, who once dominated Hollywood screens, found herself increasingly isolated from the industry that had celebrated her. Few figures from Hollywood's past are as iconic or as controversial as John Wayne. To millions of fans, Wayne represented the ultimate American hero. His roles in westerns and war films portrayed courage, patriotism, and unwavering masculinity. Movies like The Searchers turned him into one of the most recognizable figures in cinematic history. Yet Wayne's personal views often sparked criticism, especially later in his life. A controversial 1971 interview in Playboy magazine revealed opinions on race and politics that many people found deeply troubling. Decades later, the interview resurfaced and reignited debates about his legacy. On film sets, Wayne's commanding personality sometimes created tension with colleagues. He was known for strong opinions and a direct style that could intimidate others. Some critics argued that the rugged persona he portrayed on screen was not simply an act, but an extension of his real personality. Wayne remained a beloved icon for many fans until his death in 1979, but modern audiences often revisit his legacy with more complex perspectives. His story highlights how cultural values evolve over time and how the reputations of famous figures can be re-evaluated decades after their careers end. One of the most controversial figures in film history is director Roman Polanski. A brilliant filmmaker whose works include Rosemary's Baby and The Pianist, Polanski earned widespread acclaim for his artistic vision. However, his career became overshadowed by a devastating scandal. In 1977, Polanski was arrested and charged with sexually assaulting a 13-year-old girl. He pleaded guilty to unlawful sexual intercourse with a minor but fled the United States before sentencing. Since then, he has lived mostly in Europe, continuing to direct films while remaining a fugitive from American justice. The film industry's reaction to Polanski has long been controversial. Some artists continued to support him and celebrate his work, while others condemned the willingness of parts of the industry to separate his artistic achievements from the crime he admitted committing. His 2003 Oscar win for The Pianist sparked intense debate when many members of the audience applauded his victory despite the circumstances surrounding his case. For many critics, Polanski's story represents one of the clearest examples of how fame and artistic reputation can complicate moral accountability. Finally, there is Mickey Rooney, one of Hollywood's earliest and most famous child stars. During the 1930s and 1940s, he was among the highest-paid actors in America, starring in musicals and comedies that made him a household name. His cheerful personality and youthful energy defined the entertainment of an entire generation. But Rooney's personal life was filled with turmoil. He experienced financial troubles, struggled with addiction, and went through 8 marriages. His friendship with Judy Garland, with whom he starred in several films, revealed the intense pressures placed on young performers in the studio era. Late in life, Rooney also spoke publicly about being a victim of elder abuse, claiming that family members had taken advantage of him financially. The revelation added another tragic chapter to a life that had begun with extraordinary success. When Rooney died in 2014, the man who once symbolized youthful joy had lived through decades of hardship and disappointment. His story became a reminder of how fame at an early age can shape a person's entire life in complicated ways. Looking back at these stories, one thing becomes clear. Hollywood's history is far more complex than the glamorous image it often presents. Behind many legendary careers are stories of ambition, conflict, controversy, and human imperfection. The stars who once defined an era were not simply characters from films. They were real people living within an industry that often prioritized success over accountability. For filmmakers like Ron Howard and others who grew up observing the entertainment world from the inside, these stories serve as reminders that fame does not erase flaws. The same spotlight that elevates celebrities can also hide uncomfortable truths.